She was the only daughter of a billionaire. At just 9 years old, she was diagnosed with the worst kind of neglect, the invisible kind. Doctors said the signs had been there for months. She had only weeks to survive on the streets. No social treatment worked. No hope was left. Her father, a powerful, self-made billionaire, tried to buy everything money could afford. But in the end, it wasn't a social worker or a police officer who intervened. It was chance itself on a cold, early morning. What this man saw in a cardboard box, without asking fate's permission and without expecting anything in return, brought him to his knees in tears. He risked everything to save a child who carried his blood, but whom he had unknowingly abandoned. And when the world found out, everything changed. This is the true story of how love, when it's real, doesn't need excuses, only courage. And sometimes the greatest miracles come from the hearts most shattered by guilt. Before we continue with this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like the video. Oh, and be sure to comment below where you're watching from. We love to know. The fine Tuesday rain transformed Fifth Avenue into a blurred canvas of neon lights and wet asphalt. Richard Anderson walked alone, hands shoved into the pockets of his $12,000 Armani suit, completely soaked. It was 2 in the morning, and the meeting that could have saved his biggest contract of the year had collapsed like a house of cards. 3 years building a relationship with Japanese investors, 6 months of negotiations, all lost because he had arrived 15 minutes late. His driver was off, the car-sharing app froze, and Richard decided to walk the last 2 blocks. 15 minutes, $50 million, evaporated. He no longer even felt the rain. His mind was busy calculating losses, alternatives, next steps. 42 years building an empire from scratch. He started by fixing computers in his mother's garage. Today, his tech company was worth $2.5 billion. He had offices in 17 countries. 400 employees depended on him. And he was walking like a beggar at 2 in the morning because he had lost track of time. Richard ran a hand through his wet hair and quickened his pace. The commercial street was deserted, just him, the rain, and the distant hum of a garbage truck. That's when he saw it. A small shape huddled between 2 industrial dumpsters, a large cardboard box, the kind a refrigerator comes in, turned on its side. Old newspapers covered the entrance. Richard was going to walk right past. It wasn't the first homeless person he'd seen in the area. But something made him stop. Maybe it was the size, too small. A child. His feet froze in place. A child sleeping on the street in the middle of a cold night. The paternal instinct he thought he had buried under piles of contracts and meetings suddenly awoke. He approached slowly, stepping in puddles that reflected the orange light of the lamppost. "Hello?" His voice came out hoarse. "Is anyone there?" Silence. Only the sound of the rain drumming on the soaked cardboard. Richard knelt, his knees touching the wet ground. He gently pushed aside the newspapers covering the box's entrance, and he saw her. A little girl. She couldn't have been more than 9 or 10, curled up in a fetal position, wearing a dirty pink t-shirt and torn shorts, bare feet grey with grime, tangled hair covering her face. She was shivering even in her sleep. Richard felt something tighten in his chest. What kind of world allows this? What kind of parents? He reached out to touch the child's shoulder to check if she was alive. That's when he saw it, the bracelet, silver, thin, on the girl's left wrist. Richard's heart stopped. No, it couldn't be. He knew that bracelet. He had it custom-made at a Swiss jeweler. A personalized engraving. His hands trembled as he held the child's cold wrist and turned the bracelet toward the lamplight. The engraved letters shone. "Sophia, you are my sunshine, Daddy." The entire world froze in that second. The sound of the rain vanished. The garbage truck disappeared. All that existed was that bracelet and those words and the devastating impossibility before him. With a trembling hand, Richard brushed the hair from the girl's face. And he saw. the brown eyes, the shape of her nose, the dimple in her chin. Features he knew, because he saw them in the mirror every day. Features of her mother, his late first wife. It was Sophia. It was his daughter. His little Sophia, sleeping in a cardboard box, on the street, barefoot, in the middle of a cold night. "No!" The scream tore through the night like an explosion. Richard didn't even realize he was screaming. "No! No, no!" He swept the child into his arms, pulling her from the box. Her body was icy, far too cold. She didn't even wake up. "Sophia! Sophia! Wake up! It's me! It's Daddy!" His hands roamed over her fragile body, searching for injuries, ribs jutting out too far, arms as thin as twigs. How long had she been like this? Lights flickered on in the windows of the surrounding buildings. Someone shouted, "Is everything all right down there?" Richard didn't answer. He could only scream his daughter's name. A window opened on the third floor. A man in pajamas looked down. "Man, should I call the police or an ambulance? That kid looks bad." The word ambulance detonated something in Richard's paralyzed brain. "Yes. Hospital. Now." He pulled his phone from his pocket with one hand, the other holding Sophia against his chest. His fingers could barely type. He called his driver. "Get the car. 5th and 59th. Now. Hospital. Emergency. 3 minutes." He hung up. He called his lawyer. "Henry, I found Sophia. She's on the street, malnourished. She won't wake up. Presbyterian General. Find Veronica." "Now!" His voice broke. Richard took off his suit jacket and wrapped Sophia in it. Her little body was unresponsive. He pressed his face into her tangled hair and broke down. Hot tears mixed with the cold rain. "I'm sorry, my love. I'm so sorry. Daddy's here now. Daddy's here." The question hammered his mind like a runaway train. How could a man who built a billion-dollar empire fail to protect the only person who truly mattered? The black Mercedes skidded around the corner 2 minutes later. The driver jumped out. He saw the scene, turned pale. "Sir, what—" "Drive!" Richard got into the back seat, clutching Sophia. "Presbyterian General. Run every red light. I'll pay the fines." 18 months earlier. Richard Anderson's story began where all first-generation American fortunes begin, in the sweat of necessity. The son of a seamstress and a mechanic, he grew up in a blue-collar suburb, watching his mother work 16 hours a day to pay the rent. At 12, he discovered he had a knack for fixing things: radios, televisions, later computers. At 19, he dropped out of his engineering program to start a hardware maintenance company. At 25, he pivoted to software development. At 32, he sold his first startup for $80 million. At 36, he was building a tech empire that rivaled international giants. Along the way, he met Clara, a medical student with a smile that could light up a room, the only woman who looked at him and saw the man, not the money. They married in a simple ceremony. She insisted, no extravagance. 2 years later, Sophia was born. Richard held that little pink bundle in the maternity ward and swore he would give his daughter everything he never had: security, comfort, education, opportunities. Clara shook her head and said, "She doesn't need everything. She just needs you to be present." He agreed at that moment, but the empire grew too fast. Meetings multiplied, trips became weekly. He missed Sophia's first step. He missed her first word. There was always a meeting. When Sophia was 4, Clara was diagnosed with aggressive pancreatic cancer. Stage 4. Richard moved mountains. He took her to the best oncologists in the world, the United States, Germany, Japan. He spent $17 million on experimental treatments. Nothing worked. Clara died 6 months after the diagnosis. Her last request, holding his hand in the hospital bed: "Don't let work steal her from you. Promise me." Richard promised. He buried his wife on a Monday. By Thursday, he was closing the acquisition of a rival company because business couldn't stop. Sophia cried in the nanny's arms during the funeral. He didn't even notice. He was on his phone, resolving a crisis. 2 years passed in devastating loneliness. Richard drowned himself in work. It was a way not to think, not to feel. Sophia grew up under the care of nannies. He saw his daughter for 15 minutes before she went to sleep when he was in town. He traveled frequently. It was on one of these trips that he met Veronica, a tech conference in Miami. She was the PR for a sponsoring company, beautiful, sophisticated, knew exactly what to say. Made him laugh for the first time in years, 6 months of a whirlwind romance. She pushed for marriage. He resisted. But the loneliness was heavy. And Sophia needed a mother figure, at least that's what he told himself. They married on a December Saturday. A large ceremony, 300 guests in his penthouse. Sophia was there in a white dress, 7 years old, a forced smile on her face. She had asked her father the night before, "Do we really have to do this?" Richard kissed her forehead and said, "You'll see, it'll be good to have a mom again." But from the beginning, something was wrong. Veronica was sweet to Sophia when Richard was around, but the nanny started reporting strange things. Veronica being cold to the girl, impatient, disproportionate punishments for small mistakes. Richard dismissed it as jealousy between adults competing for the child's attention. He was blind, too busy to see. The marriage lasted 14 months. Veronica wanted a level of luxury that even a billionaire found excessive. Constant trips, jewelry, cars. When Richard refused, she would explode. Fights became weekly. Sophia withdrew. She stopped smiling. Her grades at school plummeted. The pediatrician suggested she needed emotional stability. That was the final straw. Richard asked for a divorce on a Tuesday. Veronica didn't resist. But she had an aggressive lawyer. She demanded $50,000 a month in support, a house, a car, and joint custody of Sophia. Richard found it strange. Veronica had never shown any real attachment to the girl. But his lawyers advised, "Take the deal. She'll give up custody eventually, and you'll pay less than you would in a years-long court battle." The deal was sealed. Veronica would live with Sophia in a house upstate, 150 miles from the city. Richard would have the girl on alternate weekends and for half the holidays. He would pay $50,000 a month in child support, plus medical and school expenses. In practice, Richard visited Sophia every other week, video calls in between visits. In the beginning, Sophia called every day. "When are you coming, Daddy?" "Soon, Princess. Daddy's closing an important deal." The calls became less frequent. She understood that her father was always busy. There was always a more important meeting. Richard noticed the change, felt a pang of guilt, but soothed his conscience by thinking, "She's safe. She has everything she needs, generous support, a good school." 6 months ago, the video calls stopped completely. Richard would try to call, but Sophia wouldn't answer. He would text Veronica, "Where's Sophia?" The reply was always similar, "Busy with homework. Went to bed early. Out with friends." Once, Richard insisted on speaking with his daughter. Veronica initiated a video call. Sophia appeared briefly, her face strange, said, "Hi, Daddy," and hung up. Something in her eyes bothered him, but he had a presentation for investors the next morning. "I'll check on it later." He never checked. 3 months ago, he tried to call Veronica. The number was disconnected. He sent a text. "Change your number?" The reply came from a new number. "Yes, bad service provider. This is the new one." Richard accepted the explanation. Why would he doubt it? The support payment was deposited religiously on the 5th of every month. Veronica sent receipts for the school tuition. Everything seemed normal. He was immersed in a negotiation that would last for months. a merger with a European company that would double the size of his empire. He woke up at 5 a.m. for calls with London. He went to bed at midnight reviewing contracts. Sophia became a peripheral thought. I need to call her. I'll call tomorrow, after this meeting. Tomorrow never came, until that rainy Tuesday, until that cardboard box, until the silver bracelet reflecting the lamplight, until the moment Richard's entire universe collapsed on a deserted avenue at 2 in the morning. As the Mercedes sped through the empty streets toward the hospital, Richard held Sophia and finally understood what Clara had tried to tell him on her deathbed. Money had bought everything, except for the truth that was 3 blocks away, except for the protection his daughter desperately needed, except for the time he would never get back. He had built an empire worth billions, but he had lost the only thing that truly mattered. And now, holding the malnourished and icy body of his 9-year-old daughter, he knew no meeting, no contract, no multi-million-dollar deal was worth this moment of absolute horror. The question that was destroying him wasn't, how did this happen? It was, how did I let this happen? Presbyterian General Hospital at 3 in the morning was a silent fortress of white corridors and fluorescent lights. Richard carried Sophia in his arms through the automatic emergency room doors, shouting for help before he even reached the reception desk. 2 nurses rushed over with a gurney. A doctor appeared out of nowhere. What happened? Richard could barely form coherent sentences. My daughter. Found her on the street. Cardboard box. Not waking up. Hypothermia. Malnutrition. The words tumbled out, punctuated by sobs he couldn't control. The doctor gave a signal, and the team disappeared with Sophia through a set of double doors. Richard tried to follow. A nurse held him back. Sir, please let the team work. You need to fill out some forms. Forms, paperwork, bureaucracy, while his daughter was dying. Richard pulled out his wallet, threw all his credit cards on the counter. Platinum, black, no limit. Do whatever you need. Bring in every specialist. Everyone. Now. The receptionist, used to emergencies but not this intensity of desperation, took the cards with trembling hands. Sir, I need the patient's information. Full name, date of birth. Richard recited everything mechanically. Sophia Clara Anderson, March 15th, 9 years old, blood type O positive, no known allergies, vaccinations up to date. At least they had been 2 years ago. He didn't even know if Veronica had kept up with her shots. The waiting room smelled of antiseptic and fear. Richard paced in circles, phone in hand, compulsively dialing Veronica's number. Voicemail, disconnected. Voicemail, disconnected. He called his lawyer again. Henry answered on the second ring, his voice sleepy but alert. Richard, what the hell is going on? You said you found Sophia on the street. She was in a cardboard box, Henry. A cardboard box, barefoot, malnourished. I can't reach Veronica. Her number's disconnected. Silence on the other end. Then, wait, Veronica lives upstate with Sophia. How is the girl in the city? The obvious question that Richard hadn't processed until that moment. I don't know. His voice was broken. I have no idea. I hadn't spoken to Sophia in months. Veronica always had an excuse. I accepted it because... He couldn't finish the sentence, because he was too busy, because he trusted blindly, because it was easier to believe everything was fine than to investigate. Henry, I need you to find out where Veronica is, now. Use a private investigator. I don't care what it costs. I'm already calling the best one I know, Henry replied. Richard, stay at the hospital. Don't leave Sophia's side. I'll be there in 20 minutes. 40 minutes later, a doctor with greying hair emerged from the double doors. Richard ran to her. My daughter... She's stable, the doctor interrupted him, her voice professional but kind. Moderate hypothermia. We've managed to normalize her body temperature. But Mr. Anderson... She paused, choosing her words carefully. Your daughter is severely malnourished. Her BMI is below the 3rd percentile for her age. Signs of chronic dehydration, anemia, a compromised immune system. Richard felt his knees buckle. He gripped the counter to keep from falling. How long? What do you mean? How long has she been like this? The doctor consulted her clipboard. Based on the tests and her physical condition, weeks, possibly months. Months. The word ricocheted inside Richard's skull like a stray bullet. His daughter had been starving for months and he didn't know. He didn't check. He didn't insist. He accepted Veronica's generic texts because it was convenient, because he had meetings, contracts, deals. Is she going to be okay? His voice was a hoarse whisper. The doctor hesitated. Physically, yes. With proper nutrition and care, she will recover. But Mr. Anderson... Another pause. We found signs of significant psychological trauma. She woke up briefly and panicked at the sight of the medical team. She screamed that she hadn't done anything wrong, begged us not to hurt her. That's not the normal reaction of a scared child. It's the response of a traumatized child. Richard covered his face with his hands. His entire body was shaking. Can I see her? She's sedated at the moment. Her body needed rest to process the initial treatment. But, sir... The doctor touched his arm. I have to ask a difficult question. How did your daughter end up on the street? I don't know. The admission burned like acid. She was supposed to be living with her mother upstate. I pay $50,000 a month in child support. I thought she was safe, well cared for. His voice broke completely. The doctor exchanged a look with the nurse. I'm going to have to notify Child Protective Services. It's protocol in cases of neglect. Neglect. The word hit him like a punch to the gut. Henry arrived at 4:15. He found Richard sitting in the hallway, head in his hands, his Armani jacket still damp with rain. I hired Marcus, best PI in the city, Henry said, sitting beside him. He's already on it. But Richard? He lowered his voice. I need you to tell me everything. When was the last time you actually spoke with Sophia, saw her in person? Richard lifted his head. His eyes were red. 6 months. The last video call was 6 months ago. The last in-person visit was 8 months ago. The admission sounded even worse, spoken aloud. 8 months without seeing your daughter. Henry couldn't hide his shock. Richard, why? Because I'm an idiot. Richard slammed a fist into his own thigh. Because I had a merger with a European company. Because I was busy. Because I believed every excuse Veronica gave me. What kind of excuses? Sophia's busy. Sophia's sleeping. Sophia's out with friends. Every time I tried to insist, Veronica would send a picture. Sophia in her room. Sophia at school, always from the back or from a distance, but it was her. The support payments went through every month. The school receipts arrived. Everything seemed normal. Henry was scribbling in a notepad. Do you have those photos? Richard took out his phone, opened the gallery. He passed the latest images to Henry. The lawyer studied each one. Richard, look at the dates on these photos. They're all from the same day. Same clothes. The sunlight is at the same angle. Veronica was just resending you the same few pictures weeks apart. Richard took the phone back. He looked at the photos. Henry was right. How had he not noticed? Because I didn't want to see, he whispered. At 5 in the morning, Sophia woke up. A nurse came to get Richard. He ran into the private room. Sophia was sitting up in the hospital bed, wide-eyed, connected to 3 different IV drips. When she saw her father, she shrank back against the wall. No, you're not real. She said you wouldn't come back. Her voice was raspy, weak. Richard stopped in the middle of the room, tears streaming down his face. Sophia, it's me, it's Daddy. I'm real, my love. I'm here. Mommy Veronica said you didn't want me anymore. Sophia started to cry. She said you have a new family, that I was a burden, that you paid so you wouldn't have to see me. Each word was a stab to Richard's heart. He approached slowly, his hands raised. "That's a lie, Princess. It's all a lie. You are the most important thing in my life. Daddy made a mistake. A very big mistake, but I never ever stopped loving you. Where is Veronica, sweetheart? Where were you living?" Sophia looked at him with eyes that had seen far too much horror, and she whispered, "On the street, Daddy. I live on the street." Sophia spoke in short, broken sentences, as if each word cost energy she didn't have. Richard sat on the edge of the hospital bed, keeping his distance so as not to scare her, but close enough to hear. "Mommy Veronica got mad at me," Sophia began, looking down at her hands. "I spilled juice on the new sofa. She screamed that I was careless, that it cost money to take care of me, that you only sent money because you had to." Every word was like walking on shattered glass. Richard swallowed the lump in his throat. "When was this, Princess?" "I don't know. A lot of days ago. She said she was taking me for a ride. She put me in the car, drove for a long time, stopped at a place with lots of buses. A bus terminal. Veronica had taken the child to a bus terminal. She gave me a backpack," Sophia continued, her voice trembling. "She said it was a game, that I had to find you by myself, that if I really loved you, I would be able to. She gave me a piece of paper with an address, said it was your office, and then she left." Richard felt bile rise in his throat. "You had the address?" Sophia nodded. "But I don't know how to read addresses right. I showed it to a lady at the bus station. She said it was far away, that I needed money for the bus. I didn't have any money, 9 years old. A 9-year-old child abandoned in a bus terminal without a penny. What did you do?" The question came out as a whisper. "I stayed there a few days. I asked for food. A man gave me a sandwich. Then the police showed up. I ran." "Why did you run, honey? The police would have helped." Sophia looked at him with an expression far too old for a child's face. "Mommy Veronica said that if the police caught me, they would put me in an orphanage, that I would never see you again, that I wasn't supposed to talk to any police. Systematic psychological manipulation." Veronica had planted fear to ensure Sophia wouldn't seek help. "So you stayed on the street?" "Yes. I slept in a park. A lady gave me a blanket. A man taught me where to ask for food. Restaurants throw it out at the end of the day. You have to go to the dumpsters in the back." His daughter had learned to dig through trash to survive. Richard covered his mouth, trying not to vomit. "Sophia, how long were you like this?" She looked at the window, calculating. "Lots of nights, lots of rain. It was hot, now it's cold." "I don't know." The doctor had said months. Sophia had survived for months on the streets while he closed multi-million-dollar deals miles away. "Did you try to find me?" "I tried." For the first time, her voice gained energy. "I tried to find your building, but New York is so big. I walked so much my feet hurt." She showed him her feet. Richard saw scars, calluses, infected blisters. "One day I saw a tall building. It looked like the one in the pictures you sent. I went there. The security guard wouldn't let me in. He said dirty kids couldn't come in. I told him you were my dad." He laughed. The image destroyed Richard. His daughter at the door of a corporate high-rise, being turned away by security, saying, "My dad works here," and being laughed at. "Which building?" "I don't know the name. It had a big word on top. Started with a T." The TechCorp building, a competitor of his own company. Sophia had been trying every corporate building she could find until she was turned away from them all. "Then I gave up," she continued, her voice returning to a whisper. "I thought Mommy Veronica was right, that you really didn't want me, that I was a burden." "No!" Richard couldn't take it anymore. He moved quickly, taking her small hands in his. "No, Princess, never. You were never a burden. I love you more than anything. It was me who failed. Me, not you." A nurse entered discreetly. "Mr. Anderson, the child needs to rest. Her blood pressure is rising with the emotional stress." Richard nodded, wiping away his tears. 10 more minutes. The nurse hesitated but left. Richard turned his attention back to Sophia. "Princess, where did you sleep?" "Lots of places. The park. Under a bridge when it rained hard. I found that box 2 weeks ago. It was good, it kept the rain out." Good. She called a cardboard box good because it was better than the alternatives she'd had. "Did you eat?" "When I found food. The restaurant on the corner throws out old bread. Miss Maria, she lives on the street too. She taught me that supermarkets throw away bruised fruit. You can eat it if you cut off the bad part." Marcus, the investigator, sent a text to Henry at 7 in the morning. Henry entered the room where Richard was still with Sophia. She had fallen asleep holding his hand. "We need to talk, now." The two went out into the hall. Henry showed him a tablet. "Marcus works fast. He found Veronica." "Where?" "A resort in the Bahamas, staying in the presidential suite. $2,400 a night." Richard's blood ran cold. "With what money?" "With your money. Marcus hacked, technically illegal, but to hell with it. Her bank statements. 50,000 coming in like clockwork on the 5th of every month. Going out for trips, hotels, expensive restaurants, designer stores." "And Sophia?" Richard asked, though he already knew the answer. Henry swiped a finger across the screen, showing a detailed statement. 0 spending on education in the last 4 months, 0 on health care, 0 on identifiable food for a child. Veronica unenrolled her from the private school in March and pocketed the refund for prepaid tuition, $8,000. Richard had to lean against the wall. She stole the money for her own. He couldn't finish. "There's more," Henry continued, his voice tense. "Marcus found something in the county clerk's system upstate. The wow moment. Veronica filed a death certificate for Sophia 4 months ago, claimed it was a car accident. The hospital corridor spun. Richard literally staggered. What? She faked Sophia's death, a forged document but officially registered. Probably bribed someone at the clerk's office." "But why?" Richard yelled. A nurse looked over from her station, concerned. "Think about it," Henry said. "If Sophia is dead, she no longer has to spend a dime on the girl. But you didn't know Sophia was dead, so the child support kept coming. 50,000 a month, free money with no child to care for." The monstrosity of the plan hit Richard like a high-speed train. Veronica hadn't just abandoned Sophia. She had forged the child's death to keep cashing in. "Do you have proof?" Richard asked, his voice dangerously calm. "All of it. Marcus is good. Bank statements showing suspicious cash withdrawals on the same date as the death certificate filing. Probably the bribe. The forged certificate. We've already confirmed with the coroner's office that there's no real record of death. Security footage of Veronica leaving Sophia at the bus terminal. Marcus paid off a security guard at the terminal to access the archives from 4 months ago. We have everything." Henry paused. "Richard, this isn't just neglect. It's fraud, forgery of a public document, embezzlement, felony child endangerment. This woman is going to prison for a long, long time." "Good," Richard said, his voice as cold as ice. "Arrest her. Now." Henry made 2 calls. The first was to a police captain who owed him a favor. The second was to a district attorney he knew from law school. By 11 a.m., an arrest warrant had been issued. The FBI, because the fraud involved interstate commerce and public documents, was dispatched to the Bahamas. At 2 in the afternoon, Henry received confirmation. Veronica Anderson arrested for felony fraud. She had resisted arrest, screamed that she had rights, that Richard was the negligent one, that she deserved the money for taking care of her stepdaughter for years. The lead agent sent a photo, Veronica in a luxurious suite, a drink in her hand, wearing a designer bikini, a boyfriend 20 years younger by her side. This was the life she had built with child support money, while Sophia was digging through trash cans. Richard showed the photo to his lawyer. "I want to sue her for every penny. I want her destroyed." "You'll get it," Henry assured him. "But Richard—" He hesitated. The media is going to get a hold of this. Billionaire, daughter abandoned on the street, ex-wife arrested. It's a dream headline. You need to prepare yourself. I don't care. You should, because they're going to ask, where were you? Why didn't you check? How did you not notice for 8 months? The same questions Richard had been asking himself since he found Sophia. They're going to crucify you too. Good, Richard said, looking through the hospital window into the room where Sophia slept. I deserve it. The news broke at 6 p.m. on Wednesday. Richard was in the hospital room with Sophia when Henry came in, his face pale, holding a tablet. It's out. He didn't have to explain what. Richard took the tablet. The headline of the country's biggest news portal. Billionaire's daughter survived on streets for months while ex-wife pocketed $50K a month. A photo of Sophia being carried to the ambulance. A photo of Veronica being arrested at the luxury resort. A photo of Richard leaving the hospital, his face shattered. Within 2 hours, the story was everywhere. Radio, TV, social media. The #1 trending topic on Twitter. Dash injustice for Sophia. The comments were brutal. What kind of father doesn't notice his daughter is missing? Billionaire has money for everything except to call his own child. He's just as guilty as the ex-wife. A child starved while her dad closed multi-million-dollar deals. Disgusting. Richard read every comment like a deserved penance. Henry tried to take the tablet from him. Stop reading this. It's not going to help. They're right, Richard said, his voice hollow. I failed. I let my daughter... You didn't know, Henry interrupted. Veronica forged documents. She manipulated... I should have checked, Richard exploded. Sophia, sleeping in the bed, stirred. He immediately lowered his voice. I'm sorry, but Henry, I should have. I'm her father. It was my responsibility. At 8 p.m., a national news network aired a special report. They interviewed experts on parental neglect. A child psychologist said, busy parents are a modern reality, but there is a line between busy and negligent. 8 months without in-person contact with a 9-year-old child crosses that line. A family law attorney was harsher. The law is clear. A parent has a duty of care and supervision. If child support was being paid, but the child was not receiving the benefit, the father should have investigated. There is shared responsibility here, the anchor concluded. While Richard Anderson was building $1 billion empire, his daughter Sophia was learning to dig through trash to survive. Tonight, Veronica Anderson is in jail, but many are asking, where was her father? Richard turned off the TV. He looked at Sophia, sleeping peacefully for the first time in months, connected to nutritional IVs. She had gained 4 pounds in 3 days. The color was returning to her face. But her eyes, when she was awake, her eyes carried a weight no child should ever bear. The hospital psychologist had visited that morning. The diagnosis, severe psychological trauma, possible PTSD, a need for intensive, long-term therapy. Will she recover? Richard had asked. Physically, yes, the psychologist replied. Emotionally, that will depend on you. She needs to relearn how to trust, especially you. Thursday brought a twist no one expected. Marcus, the investigator, called Henry at 10 in the morning. I found something big. Half an hour later, he was at the hospital with a laptop. He showed the documents to Richard and Henry. Veronica didn't act alone. The county clerk's office that registered the fake death certificate. I uncovered an entire network. 15 fake certificates in the last 2 years, all faked deaths, always children, always in cases involving child support or inheritances. Richard's stomach turned. How many children? 15 that we've found, probably more. Where are these children? Marcus paused heavily. 3 have been found dead, extreme neglect. The rest, we're still looking. The room fell into a deathly silence. Was Veronica involved in a trafficking ring? Henry asked. Not exactly trafficking. More like disposal. Parents paying support. Mothers who didn't want the responsibility. The clerk's office would forge a death for a fee. The child was then abandoned. The money kept flowing. Veronica paid the clerk $40,000. Richard felt bile rise in his throat. Sophia could have died. She should have died, Marcus said with brutal honesty. The survival rate for a 9-year-old child alone on the streets for 4 months, less than 10%. Your daughter is either absurdly lucky or incredibly resilient. The other children... Richard couldn't finish. The FBI has been notified. This is going to be a national operation. Mass arrests are coming. The revelation partially shifted the public narrative. New headlines: Billionaire's ex-wife involved in fake death certificate ring. Criminal network profited from child abandonment. But the comments about Richard remained fierce. This doesn't absolve him. He's still a negligent father. He only uncovered the scheme because it affected him. What about the other kids? Richard read everything. He absorbed every criticism like a necessary flagellation. Henry finally snatched the phone from him. Enough! You're going to destroy yourself. I'm already destroyed, Richard replied. Look at what I allowed to happen. He gestured towards Sophia. She was miles away from me. I could have saved her in minutes if I had just checked. All I had to do was call. On Friday, Sophia woke up more alert. Her first question, where's Mommy Veronica? Richard, sitting by her bed, chose the truth. She was arrested, Princess. The police found out about some very bad things she did. Sophia processed this. Is she coming back? No, not for a very, very long time. The expression on Sophia's face was complex. Fear, relief, confusion. Did I do something wrong? No, Richard took her hands. You did nothing wrong, nothing. She did. And I failed too. I should have protected you. I'm so sorry, Sophia, so sorry. Sophia looked at him with those 2 old eyes. Are you going to send me away again? The question shattered him. Never, never again. You're staying with me, forever. The people on TV say you're a bad dad. Sophia had overheard the nurses talking. Richard swallowed the lump. They're right. I was a bad dad. A very bad dad. I let work become more important than you. I believed lies because it was easier. I failed to protect you. Tears were now flowing freely. But I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying to fix it. If you'll let me. Sophia was quiet for a long time. Then, on the street, I used to see other dads, picking up their kids from school, buying them ice cream, playing in the park. I wished so hard that you would show up, that you would find me. I used to dream that you would come and save me. Every word was a knife. And I did come, Richard said. Too late, but I came. And I am never, ever losing you again. Promise? I promise. How will the TV stop saying bad things? Richard took a deep breath. It won't. Not for a while. People are angry with me, and they have a right to be. But Sophia, no matter what they say, you are my priority now. Only you. Sophia looked at him, gauging his sincerity. Are you going to stop working? The question was a test. I'm going to work less, a lot less. You're going to live with me. I'll take you to school. I'll pick you up. We'll have dinner together every night. We'll sleep in the same house every night. No more trips. No more meetings that are more important than you. What if a very important meeting comes up? Richard smiled sadly. There is no meeting more important than you. I learned that the most painful way possible. On Saturday, Veronica gave an interview from jail. It was a monumental tactical error. Her lawyer tried to stop her, but she insisted. The reporter asked, "Why did you abandon Sophia?" Veronica's response, "That child was a burden. Richard was never a real father. It was always just about the money. He paid so he wouldn't have to see her. I did him a favor. The reporter pressed. But you faked her death and continued to receive the support payments. Veronica, showing no visible remorse. I deserved that money. I took care of her for years. He barely ever showed up. Sophia is better off without a negligent father. She's probably better off without me, too. At least on the street, she learned how to fend for herself. The interview went viral, but not in the way Veronica had hoped. The comments shifted. She's a psychopath. What a monster. How can someone say that about their own stepdaughter? But also, she has a point. Where was the father? The question that haunted Richard. Where was he? Closing deals, expanding an empire, building a corporate legacy while failing at the only legacy that mattered. On Sunday, he made a decision. He called an emergency meeting of the company's executive board via video conference from the hospital. Effective immediately, I am stepping down as CEO for an indefinite period of time, a minimum of 6 months, possibly permanently. A shocked silence. Richard, you can't, the CFO began. I can and I will. Mark will take over as interim CEO. I trust him completely. I'll retain my shares, but I will have zero operational involvement. You're throwing away the empire you built, another executive protested. No, Richard corrected him. I'm saving what actually matters. I should have done this years ago. Monday, the New York County Supreme Court. Veronica Anderson's custody and bail hearing. Richard was there, front row next to Henry. Sophia remained at the hospital. The psychologist recommended she not see her former stepmother yet. The courtroom was packed. Journalists, onlookers. The assistant district attorney laid out the charges: forgery of a public document, grand larceny, felony child endangerment, criminal conspiracy. Each charge carried years in prison. Combined, Veronica was facing 16 to 24 years. The judge, a woman in her 60s with a reputation for severity, studied the documents in a deadly silence. Veronica's lawyer attempted a pathetic defense. My client was suffering from psychological abuse at the hands of her ex-husband. She was forced to care for a child that was not hers. She had a mental breakdown. The prosecutor destroyed the argument in 30 seconds. A mental breakdown that allowed for the planning of an elaborate fraud, the bribery of a public official, the calculated abandonment at a bus terminal, enjoying a life of luxury at a resort while a child starved. That is not a breakdown, that is monstrosity. The gallery applauded. The judge banged her gavel. Order! But even she seemed to agree. Veronica, sitting at the defendant's table, maintained an expression of boredom, as if the proceedings were a minor inconvenience. Does the defense wish to call a witness? The judge asked. Veronica's lawyer hesitated. Yes, Your Honor. I call Richard Anderson to the stand. Henry gripped Richard's arm. You don't have to... It's okay, Richard said. He stood, walked to the front, swore to tell the truth. Veronica's lawyer smiled like a shark. Mr. Anderson, when was the last time you saw your daughter before you found her on the street? 8 months prior. Murmurs in the gallery. 8 months. And the last video call? 6 months ago. And you found this normal, sir? No. Richard did not look away. I should have insisted more. Why didn't you insist? Because I was busy. I had the wrong priorities. The lawyer pressed. Busy with what? Building a company. Closing deals. Expanding an empire that I now realize means nothing. You paid $50,000 a month in child support? Yes. Did you ever visit in person to verify how that money was being used? Richard closed his eyes. No. Did you ever insist on speaking with Sophia in person, face to face, when she couldn't come to the phone? Not hard enough. So you would agree, sir, that you also failed as a father? The entire room held its breath. Henry was on his feet. Objection. Relevance? The judge looked at Richard. The witness may answer if he wishes. Richard looked directly at Veronica, then at the cameras, then at the judge. Yes. The word landed like a bomb. I failed as a father, completely. I prioritized meetings over hugs, contracts over conversations. It was easier to accept excuses than to investigate. I blindly trusted someone who didn't deserve that trust. I left my daughter vulnerable, and she suffered the terrible consequences of my neglect. Tears were streaming freely now. He didn't try to hide them. I wake up every day with crushing guilt. I see my daughter malnourished, traumatized, afraid, and I know I could have prevented it. If I had called more, visited more, cared more, I failed. Absolute silence in the room. But, Richard continued, his voice gaining strength, my failure does not absolve her. He pointed at Veronica. I failed through neglect. She acted with malice. She didn't just abandon a helpless child. She planned it. She forged documents, bribed an official, lied systematically. She left Sophia at a bus terminal with no money, no phone, no way to get back. She psychologically manipulated a child to be afraid of seeking help. And then she used the money that was supposed to feed and educate my daughter to live a life of luxury. Resorts, trips, plastic surgery, while Sophia was digging through rotten garbage to keep from starving to death. His voice echoed. I deserve criticism. I deserve judgment. I will spend the rest of my life trying to make it right. But she deserves prison. A long, long time in prison, because this wasn't a mistake. It was a crime against a defenseless child. Veronica finally reacted. You hypocrite! You never cared about that girl. You only cared when it became a headline. Where were you when she needed you? Richard turned to her. You're right, I wasn't there, and it destroys me every single day. But do you know the difference between us? He stepped closer. I acknowledge my mistake. I am changing. I stepped down from my company. Sophia lives with me now. I take her to therapy. I have every meal with her. I sleep in the room next door in case she has a nightmare. I'm present. You feel no remorse at all. Not one bit. I saw your interview. She's better off without me. You abandoned a 9-year-old child to die, and you're not sorry. Order! The judge slammed her gavel. Mr. Anderson, please be seated. Richard returned to his seat, his hands shaking. Henry squeezed his shoulder. You did well. Veronica was called to testify. Her lawyer tried to prep her, but she was spiraling. That man has no moral high ground to judge me. He built his empire on the backs of exploited employees. He pays the minimum in taxes. He's never donated a dime to charity. Hypocrite. The prosecutor stood. Your Honor, Mr. Anderson's general character is not on trial. The focus is the specific treatment of the child, Sophia. Sustained, the judge agreed. The defendant will focus on the specific charges. Veronica realized she was losing. The prosecutor took over the questioning. Why did you forge the death certificate? Veronica hesitated. I was desperate. I had no money. Your bank records show $87,000 in your personal account when you abandoned Sophia. Where was this financial desperation? Silence. Why didn't you return Sophia to her father if you no longer wanted the responsibility? He didn't deserve, but you deserve $50,000 a month? Veronica had no answer. How much did you pay the clerk for the false document? I don't remember. There's a bank transfer for $40,000 3 days before the certificate was filed. A coincidence. Veronica was sweating. Where were you in September when Sophia was sleeping in a cardboard box? At a resort in the Bahamas. How much did you spend on that trip? $23,000 in 6 days, while a 9-year-old girl was eating rotten food out of the trash. Every question was a hammer blow. Every answer buried Veronica deeper. By the time the prosecutor was finished, the defense had nothing. The judge called a recess to deliberate. An hour later, she returned. The packed courtroom waited in silence. Having reviewed the evidence presented, the testimony, and the sheer gravity of these crimes, I hereby rule: Veronica Anderson will be remanded into custody without bail. The flight risk is evident. The risk to society is clear. A full trial will be scheduled in 3 months, but I can say now, the evidence is overwhelming. This court has rarely seen a case with such clear malice, premeditation, and an absolute lack of remorse. If convicted, and I believe she will be, the sentence will not be light. She banged her gavel. The defendant is remanded. Veronica screamed as she was led away. This is an injustice. He's just as guilty as I am. But the doors were already closing. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed Richard. Mr. Anderson, is the ruling just? How do you feel? Will you be filing a civil suit? Richard stopped. He looked at the cameras. Veronica will pay for what she did, but that doesn't erase my failure. It doesn't bring back the 4 months Sophia lost. It doesn't heal her trauma. So no, I don't feel victorious. I feel destroyed, but I also feel hopeful. Because now I have a chance to fix it, to be the father I should have always been, and I will dedicate the rest of my life to that. He turned to the main cameras. And to any other parents watching, it doesn't matter how busy you are. It doesn't matter how important the meeting is. Your children need you, present, attentive. I learned too late. I almost lost everything. Don't make my mistake. And he walked away, ignoring the other questions. At the hospital, Sophia was awake, watching cartoons. When Richard came in, she paused the TV. So? She's going to be in jail for a long time. Sophia processed that. How long? Years. Many years. Good. Sophia turned her attention back to the cartoon. But then, Dad? Yes? Will you stay with me tonight? It was a test. She asked every day. I'll stay tonight, tomorrow, and every day after. I promise. What if you have an important meeting? There is no meeting more important than you. Sophia looked at him. For the first time since he'd found her, she offered a small half-smile. Okay, then. And she held out her hand. Richard took it, tears welling up again. She trusted him. A tiny step, but it was gigantic. 6 months later. The penthouse on the Upper East Side no longer looked like a corporate museum of glass and steel. Sophia's drawings covered the refrigerator. Dolls were scattered in the living room. Children's books were stacked on the coffee table. Richard had sold 40% of his stake in the company for a price that would make any investor weep with envy. But he didn't weep. He just signed the papers and deposited the money into a trust fund for Sophia. The rest? Donated to causes he didn't even know existed 6 months ago. Children's shelters, programs for finding missing children, reforming the child protective system. $700 million distributed. The headlines called it the Billionaire's Redemption. He called it the bare minimum. Sophia was in therapy 3 times a week. Doctor. Fernanda was a specialist in childhood trauma. The sessions were hard. Sophia relived the abandonment, the fear, the loneliness, but she was also processing it, learning that none of it was her fault, that she deserved love, security, presence. Physically, the transformation was remarkable. She had gained 25 pounds. Her hair had grown back healthy. She smiled more. She even laughed sometimes. But the nightmares still came. Nights when she would wake up screaming, thinking she was back in the cardboard box. Richard always heard her, always ran to her room, held her until the shaking stopped. Daddy's here, you're safe, no one is going to hurt you. And he would stay until she fell asleep again, every single time. It was necessary. Their routine was sacred. Richard woke at 6. He made breakfast. Pancakes were Sophia's favorite. At 7, they woke her with soft music. Breakfast together, talking about dreams, plans for the day, anything. At 8, He drove her personally to a small private school Dr. Fernanda had recommended, not the huge elite academy Sophia had attended before. This was a welcoming school, with 15 students per class and teachers trained in dealing with trauma. At 3 p.m., Richard was at the gate to pick her up. Every day, without exception, a snack together. Homework, he helped, even if he didn't understand fourth-grade math. Dinner at 7, always together, at the table, talking, laughing when possible. 8:30, bath time. 9 o'clock, a story before bed. He read aloud until she fell asleep. Work, video meetings only, and only when Sophia was at school. Nothing after 3 p.m., nothing on weekends. The company's board begged him to return. Mark is good, but he's not you. Richard's response, then Mark will learn, or you'll hire someone else. My daughter needs me more than the company does. Shareholders complained about non-optimized decisions. Richard sold more of his shares. He now owned 22%, still a billionaire, but no longer in control, and he was fine with it. Because he had traded board meetings for the park, contracts for cartoons, international travel for camping in the backyard, a corporate empire for goodnight hugs, it was the best deal he had ever made. One Tuesday, Sophia asked during dinner, "Dad, do you miss it?" "Miss what, Princess?" "Work, the trips, being important." Richard put down his fork. He looked into her brown eyes. "You know what I learned? I used to think being important was having a big company, money, power. But I was wrong. Being important is being necessary to someone you love. And you made me important again, the right way." Sophia processed that. "I make you important. More important than any contract. It was always that way. I just forgot for a while. You reminded me." "How?" "When I saw you in that box, I realized nothing I ever built mattered if I lost you. You are my only real success." Over the weekend, they visited a shelter where Sophia had spent 2 nights early in her time on the streets. She had mentioned the place in therapy. "Miss Celia was nice to me. She gave me food. But I ran away because there were too many kids, and I got scared." Richard wanted to meet Miss Celia. The shelter was a small, underfunded institution with 30 children in a space meant for 15. Miss Celia, a woman in her 60s with kind eyes, recognized Sophia immediately. "My dear God, it's you! I looked for you for weeks. When I saw the news—" She hugged Sophia. Richard talked with her. He learned the shelter ran on minimal donations, a shortage of beds, rationed food, no psychologist on staff. On Monday, he transferred $2 million, renovate, hire professionals, double the capacity, and I'll donate another $3 million annually for the next 10 years. But he didn't stop there. Richard created the Sophia Foundation, named by the girl herself. Its mission, to find missing children, especially those lost in the system through fraud, like the kind Veronica had committed. He hired investigators, facial recognition technology. He partnered with law enforcement. In 6 months, they located 11 of the 15 children from Veronica's network. 3 had already died. 8 were alive, in various situations, on the street, in shelters. 1 had even been informally adopted by a family. All were reunited with their legal guardians, parents who, like Richard, thought they had lost their children forever. The reunions were devastating and beautiful. Richard took Sophia to a few of them. She saw other children being saved. She understood that her pain had helped others. Veronica was sentenced in March, 12 years in a maximum security prison. The clerk who helped her got 8 years. 6 other county employees were indicted. The network was dismantled. During the sentencing, the judge said, "Your crimes represent the deepest possible betrayal of a defenseless child. There are no mitigating factors, only aggravating ones. 12 years is the minimum my conscience will allow." Veronica showed no emotion, just turned her back as she was led away. Richard watched on video, He didn't want to go in person, preferring to stay with Sophia. When it was over, she asked, "Is it finished?" "Yes, it's finished." "Good. Can I play my video game now?" He laughed. It was the first time she had treated the subject with the lightness of a normal child. Progress. April brought Sophia's birthday. She was 10. Richard planned a small party. 10 friends from her new school. Nothing ostentatious. A clown, a cake, party games. Sophia laughed more that day than she had in months combined. As she blew out the candles, Richard asked, "Make a wish?" "I did." "Can you tell me?" "Normally you couldn't, but she said, 'I wish that you would never go away again.'" His heart clenched. "I won't. I promise." "Grown-up promises break sometimes," she said, "too old again." "Mine won't." She looked at him. "How do you know?" "Because losing you was the worst thing that ever happened to me. I learned my lesson. I won't forget it again." May. A Tuesday, 2 in the morning. Richard was driving back from a charity event for the Sophia Foundation, the first nighttime event he had agreed to attend in months. Sophia was with a babysitter she adored. It took 2 months for her to accept a sitter again. He was driving down Fifth Avenue, the same time, but he was a completely different man. He stopped at a red light, looked to his right. He saw a homeless person sleeping in a shop doorway. 6 months ago, he would have driven right past. Tonight, he parked, got out of the car, approached slowly. "Sir, are you okay?" The man woke with a start, mid-50s, tired eyes. "I don't want any trouble." "No trouble," Richard assured him. "Are you hungry?" The man hesitated, then nodded. Richard pointed to a 24-hour diner on the corner. "Let's get something to eat." 15 minutes later, the man, whose name was Joseph, was eating a full plate of food while telling his story. Lost his job, his wife, his house. His kids were in a shelter because he had nowhere to live. Richard listened to it all. At the end, he gave him a card. "This is the contact for a shelter I fund. Look for Miss Celia tomorrow. Tell her I sent you. She'll help you reconnect with your children. And this," he handed him another card, "is for an HR firm I partner with. They help people get a fresh start. I'm not promising a miracle, but I'm promising a chance." Joseph held the cards with trembling hands. "Why are you doing this?" Richard thought of Sophia, the box, the bracelet. "Because someone very important taught me that it's never too late to do the right thing." He got back in his car, drove home. 3 a.m. The apartment was silent. He went to check on Sophia, a nightly routine. He opened her bedroom door slowly. She was sitting up in bed. "Dad." "Sophia, why are you awake?" "I had a nightmare. I thought you weren't coming back." He sat on her bed. "I always come back now, always." "Promise?" "I promise." She studied his face. "You look different." "How so?" "I don't know. More here." She touched her own heart, then his. "You're more here." He hugged her. "That's because you brought me back." "From where?" "From a very bad place where I was lost. You saved me, princess. Not the other way around." Sophia lay back down. "Dad, can I tell you a secret?" "Always." "Sometimes I'm still scared that I'll wake up and you'll be gone again, that this was all a dream." Richard lay down beside her. "Want to know my secret? I'm scared too. Scared I'll fail again, that I won't be the dad you deserve. But you know what I do with that fear." "What?" "I use it to remember what's important. Every day I wake up and I choose you. Always you. The fear doesn't go away, but the love is bigger." Sophia thought about that. "Love is bigger than fear." "It always was. I just forgot. You reminded me." "Dad?" "Yes, I think I forgive you." The words caught Richard off guard. The tears came instantly. "Thank you. But you can't fail again." "I won't." If you do, I'll be very mad. A half smile. Fair enough. And I'll eat all the chocolate ice cream without you. Now that's just cruel. She giggled, the most beautiful sound in the world. I love you, Dad. I love you, Princess. More than anything, more than money, more than work, more than my own life. You're my heart walking around outside my body. You always were. Sophia fell asleep holding his hand. Richard stayed there, in the little room filled with drawings and toys, listening to her soft breathing. He thought about the last 6 months, about how much he had lost, the company, the control, billions in market value, and how much he had gained. Pancake breakfasts, afternoons at the park, genuine laughter, tight hugs, whispered, I love yous before sleep. There was no comparison. He had built an empire that impressed the world, but he had been hollow inside. Now he had a smaller life in corporate terms, but an infinitely larger one in human terms. Sophia had saved him just as much as he had saved her. She had taught him that success isn't measured in dollars or power. It's measured in moments, in presence, in love made manifest through daily actions. He got up slowly, kissed her forehead, and left the room. In the living room, he picked up his phone. 17 unread work emails. He deleted them all without reading. It didn't matter. He opened his photo gallery. 6 months of captured moments. Sophia on her first day at the new school, smiling shyly. Sophia at the park, laughing on the swing set. Sophia doing homework at the kitchen table. Sophia sleeping peacefully after weeks of nightmares. Every photo was a victory, every smile a hard-won miracle. He posted one on Instagram, his first post in months, a photo of Sophia from the back, her face hidden for privacy, on the swing. The caption was simple. Some truths break you, others rebuild you. I lost billions, I gained everything. The comments poured in by the thousands, mostly supportive now. You did the right thing. An example for all parents. True redemption. A few were still critical. You just did your job. Forgiveness doesn't erase neglect. He read them all. The critics were right. He had just done his job. Forgiveness didn't erase the past, but the present and the future were his to write. And he was writing them differently. One morning, one lunch, one bedtime story at a time. Act by act, presence by presence. Rebuilding trust, brick by brick. Maybe it would take a lifetime. That was okay. He had a lifetime to give. He finally had his priorities straight. He lay down on the sofa, looked at the ceiling, thought of Clara, his first wife, Sophia's mother. She had asked him, "Don't let work steal her from you." He had broken that promise for years, but he was fixing it now. Sorry it took me so long, he whispered to the ceiling, but I learned. I finally learned, and I will take care of her for the rest of my life. I promise. He imagined Clara smiling, approving, forgiving. He fell asleep right there on the living room sofa, the door to Sophia's room left open, his ears attentive in case she woke from a nightmare. Always vigilant now, always present, always choosing her. Tuesday dawned. 6 a.m. The alarm went off. Richard got up, went to the kitchen, pancakes, the sacred routine. As he stirred the batter, he heard little footsteps. He turned. Sophia was at the door, her hair messy, her eyes sleepy. "Good morning, Dad." "Good morning, Princess. Did you sleep well after?" "Yeah? You stayed?" "I always stay." She came closer, wrapped her arms around his waist. They stood like that for a minute, a simple hug, but it contained everything: forgiveness, love, a new beginning. "Dad?" "Yes?" "Thank you for not giving up on me." Richard knelt to be at her eye level. He held her small face in his hands. "Sophia, you listen to me. I will never give up on you. Never. No matter what happens, you are mine. I am yours. Forever. Forever? Forever. Even if I mess up? Even if the world ends? Even if I get a bad grade? Even if you fail 10 years in a row? She laughed. Even if I eat the last of the chocolate ice cream? Okay, that one I might have to think about. She laughed louder. He hugged her tight. I love you, kiddo, more than anything in the universe. I love you too, Dad, even more than chocolate. That's a lot. It is. You deserve it. They went back to the kitchen. Pancakes, juice, talk about nothing and everything, plans for the day, school, a new friend, the book she was reading, a beautiful, hard one, deserved normality. While he washed the dishes, Sophia drying beside him, singing a cartoon theme song off-key, Richard looked out the window. The city was waking up, people rushing to work, cars honking, the world spinning at the frantic pace he used to live by. But he was here, in his kitchen, washing a plate, listening to his daughter sing, and it was perfect. He would never go back to that old speed. Never. He had discovered something that billions couldn't buy: peace, true purpose, love manifested in presence. Sophia was his teacher, 9 years old, a survivor, a bearer of a wisdom it had taken him 42 years to learn. Nothing matters if you lose the ones you love. Absolutely nothing. Dad, are you done? Sophia asked. Yep, last pan. Can I watch cartoons before school? You can. 15 minutes. She ran to the living room, turned on the TV. Richard dried his hands, sat next to her on the sofa. She automatically leaned against him. He put his arm around her. They watched cartoons together, a common scene in millions of homes, but to him it was a miracle, because he had come so close to losing this forever, so close to never getting it back. The cardboard box, the silver bracelet, the scream that echoed for 3 blocks, the moment that changed everything, the moment that saved him. Late that afternoon, after picking Sophia up from school, they stopped at an ice cream shop, their new ritual. What flavor today? Chocolate. Always chocolate. Predictable. And you always get cookies and cream, also predictable. Touché. They sat on a bench on the sidewalk, eating ice cream, watching people pass by. Dad? Are you happy now? A heavy question, but the answer was simple. Yes, happier than I've ever been. Even though you lost the company. I didn't lose it. I sold part of it. But yes, even with less money, less power, less success in the old sense, I'm happier. Why? Because I have you, for real, present, and I learned that's the only success that matters. You say really nice things. She licked her ice cream. But I tested you. When? Last week, when your secretary called about that meeting in China. I heard you say, I don't travel anymore. If they need me, they can do it by video. You passed the test. Richard laughed. You tested me. Therapy said to check if you've really changed, so I tested you. How many more tests are there? A lot. I hope you pass. I'll pass all of them. Good, because failure means no ice cream for you. The pressure is immense. They laughed together, finished their ice cream, went home. Dinner, homework, bath, story, the routine that was their structure, their safety, their love in action. 9 p.m., Sophia asleep. Richard sat in the home office he barely used anymore. He opened his laptop. An email from the company. Mark, the interim CEO, reported, quarter closed 18% above projection. The European merger is finalized. Market value is up 2.3 billion. You should be celebrating, even from a distance. Richard smiled. The company was thriving without him, proof that he was replaceable. Everyone is, but as Sophia's father, irreplaceable. He replied, Great work, Mark. Keep it up. I trust you. He closed the laptop. He didn't open it again. He didn't need to. He had a real life to live, a life it took almost losing his daughter to appreciate. But now he appreciated it. Every day, every moment. 6 months and 3 weeks after finding Sophia in the box. Sunday, a sunny morning. Richard and Sophia were having a picnic in the park. A checkered blanket, sandwiches, juice, the drawing pads Sophia had brought along. He was trying to draw. He was terrible at it. She was laughing at his stick figure. "Dad, is that a horse?" "It's a dog. It looks like a broken centipede." Laughter, playfulness. Suddenly, Sophia turned serious. "Dad, can I ask you something hard? Always. Do you still think about that night? With the box?" He stopped drawing. "Every day. Does it hurt?" "Yes, it always will. But," he chose his words, "the pain reminds me of what's important. It keeps me focused, so I don't want to forget. I need to remember so I don't repeat it." "I remember too," Sophia said quietly, "but it doesn't hurt as much anymore, because I wake up in a soft bed, I eat pancakes, I have you. And you always will." "Dad?" "Yes?" "Thank you for finding me." The simplicity of the sentence belied its depth. He hadn't just found her by accident. It was the exact right moment. The universe, fate, God, whatever you call it, had put him on that street at that hour. It had given him one last chance to fix everything, and he had taken it. "Thank you for taking me back," Richard replied. "After everything I did wrong, you gave me a second chance. That's a greater gift than anything. You're my dad. Second chances are a family's job." The wisdom of a 10-year-old. They flew a kite. His crashed 3 times, hers soared. They ate sandwiches. They talked about simple travel plans, the beach for the holidays, no over-the-top luxury. They went home late in the afternoon, had dinner, the routine. When Sophia was asleep, Richard stood in her doorway as he did every night, watching her soft breathing, silently giving thanks for each day, for each moment, for the second chance he didn't deserve but received anyway. He whispered, "Good night, princess. I love you beyond the stars." And as he always did, he left the door ajar, the light from the hallway spilling in, reminding her that she wasn't alone. She would never be alone again. Some truths break you, others rebuild you. Richard lost billions in market value. He lost control of the empire he built. He lost his reputation as a ruthless executive. But he gained pancake breakfasts. He gained afternoons at the park. He gained tight hugs before bed. He gained whispered "I love yous" that are worth more than any contract. He gained back what truly mattered. The question was never, "How much do you have?" The question was always, "Who do you have, and are you present for them?" Fade to black. For busy parents everywhere, your children don't need your perfection. They need your presence. It's not too late. There is still time. Choose them. Today.